Hope you're okay today. I just wanted to read you my second chapter of my novel Against the World, Chapter 2, Bedroom Antics. So I just wanted to read it and people to comment, tell me what you think. It's only a very rough draft. I normally do 3 drafts, okay? So it's very, very rough. So here we go. Dr. Mayer drove his white Corolla down the motorway, meditating on what had happened that day. He was amazed the police had let him go. They had not worked out the gunman was after him. It was 1 a.m. in the morning, and he wondered why Sandra, his research assistant, had not rung him. He took his mobile and rang home. No answer. Why would anyone be after me just because I might know where they may be? Why would that be a danger? He rang again. There was no answer. She would ring me if I was coming home this late. Something is wrong. About 2 a.m. Dr. Mayer arrived in Manchester. He made his way to Didsbury, a place where the wealthy of Manchester lived. His house was based inside the ground of the Nazarene Theological College or Seminary. Here he spent his time as Professor of New Testament Studies, lecturing on New Testament books and guiding PhD students on John Wesley's studies, another topic he was an expert at. The other half of his work was spent at Tyndale House, a biblical research centre situated amongst Cambridge University. Dr. Mayer would spend his time researching New Testament manuscripts, ancient manuscripts, and on the life and thought of Josephus. It was not long ago that he wrote and published a book on the Jewish historian, which gave him a worldwide reputation as an authority on the subject. "I'll go around the back," he thought. He parked the car at the top of the street, a good walking distance from the seminary, and he could see some of the seminary glittering in the moonlight. It looked like a large Elizabethan house. He then went through some back streets and climbed over a fence, where he walked across the seminary lawn, which was half the size of a football pitch, surrounded with trees. His Elizabethan-looking 4-bedroom house stood next to the student dorms, which looked like a First World War army cabin for recruits that took about 100 students, or where 100 students lived. Nobody was in sight. Still, he entered the house from the back. He crept round the rooms, not turning lights on, and he tiptoed upstairs. Then, on his bed was Sandy, tied with her hands behind her back. She had a sock stuffed in her mouth. Quickly, he pulled out the sock. "Shh, don't say anything," he whispered. He untied the tall model-looking blonde. She wore a white polo-neck jumper, black skirt and boots. Dr. Mayer had a crush on her, but dare not reveal it. They both crept under the bedroom window, and they heard people talking outside. Dr. Mayer looked. "What's going on?" Dr. Mayer asked Sandy. "I don't know. Keep quiet." And he could see a tall, thin Chinese woman smoking a cigarette from a long cigarette holder. She was dressed in black leather suit from head to toe, and she was talking to 2 big Chinese sumo wrestlers who wore black suits and ties with bowler hats. A black Rolls Royce slid through the seminary gates, pushing next to the 2 Chinese men. One of the seminary lights came on, and Dr. Ford, the principal, came out, wearing his light blue dressing gown. He was ready for retirement and was revered as a godly man by the students. "Excuse me, who are you? What are you doing here? Do you know what time it is?" The Chinese woman took a long pin from the back of her hair. She threw it, and it went right into the principal's neck. He choked, then dropped to the ground. At the student dormitory, lights came on and two students came out to take a look. One of the Chinese men had a pistol with a silencer, and he shot them both. They fell to the ground. By now, Dr. Rainsy, an old man who was the retired principal, came down from his flat in the seminary. He had been given the flat as a gift for his long-time service. He had seen what had happened from a small window next to the seminary entrance door. Being a fiery Scotchman at 75 years old, he made his way to the groundman's shed. The groundman was known to have a shotgun, which he used at the weekends. He banged on the shed door. "Fred, Fred, wake up!" He was Scottish. Fred came to the door, and he was 6 foot and dressed in long johns. He had a big bushy beard with his two front teeth missing. "Dr. Rainsy, what have you done now?" "Nothing, you rascal Fred. I know you. Now where's that shotgun now? We have nasty killers who spilt precious blood, the blood of Dr. Ford, and fine students in the bargain." "You mean killed?" "I know where the gun is," he says. Fred knew Dr. Rainey was crazy, but he also knew he was an honest man, and he was furious at the news. "The cavalry is here, Dr. Rainey," said Fred, and with Fred pulled from under his bed a chest, he pulled out 2 shotguns and gave one to Dr. Rainey and himself. They dashed off, but he ran back to get a sword, which he gave to Dr. Rainey. The 2 heroes now were in sight of the enemy, and they pointed the shotguns. "You scoundrel, you wait here for the police," said Dr. Rainey, and the 3 Chinese put their hands up. "Don't shoot," said the Chinese woman. "May you go to hell, you, for what you done," replied Dr. Rainey. Just then the Rolls-Royce lights came on and sped at them, and Dr. Rainey and Fred shot at the vehicle when it drove to the side, crashing into the main seminary wall. By now, Dr. Rainey and Fred both sides were opening fire. Dr. Rainey and Fred lied on the floor and returned fire. The students were coming out to see what was happening. "Get back in, you fools!" screamed Dr. Rainey. After a few minutes, both sides were out of ammo, and the Chinese ran upstairs of the house. "Leave her alone, don't take me," said Dr. Mayer. The Chinese woman took another pin from her hair, and she grabbed Dr. Mayer and pointed the steel to his neck. "Leave him alone," screamed Sandy, and one of the sumo men grabbed her arm. Fred and Dr. Rainey now ran into the house and then upstairs. "Here, you be in for it now. Fred is a wrestling champion. Go and get him, Fred." So one of the Chinese sumos grabbed Fred's stomach and squeezed him, and Fred smiled, nutted the opponent onto the bed. The man was out cold, and then the man holding Sandy ran to Fred. He punched Fred in the mouth, and Fred smiled and put out a tooth. Then Fred punched, and the man was hit right on the chin. He went whizzing back, smashing through the bedroom window. "Get back or I'll kill him," threatened the woman, and she dug the pin into the flesh of Dr. Mayer, and he began to bleed a little. "No, you won't," said Dr. Rainey. "Get a Fred, and he'll rip her from limb to limb." With this, the Chinese woman threw the needle at Fred. It hit him in the neck, and he pulled it out, then ran to her. She threw 4 kung fu kicks, kicking him back, and he ran at her again, and she kicked him again, knocking him on the bed. Then she jumped on his back, pulled his head to the side, and broke his neck. Dr. Rainey had his sword, Dr. Rainey with his sword ran at the woman, and she jumped up to the ceiling, came down and kicked him on his head. As Dr. Rainey fell to the ground, she took the sword and cut his head off. Then she turned round, pointing the sword at Dr. Rainey. "It's now for you. It's now your turn." Dr. Mayer backed away, and she came closer, and Sandra was behind. In quick thinking, she jumped on the Chinese woman's back and began to pull her hair out. The Chinese woman went crazy trying to pull Sandra off her. Dr. Mayer was hesitant, and then he jumped in. He grabbed the sword and pushed her arm into the air. As the three fought for life, to his amazement he was able to get the sword off the woman, and she pushed Sandy onto the bed, and as she lay on she used her elbows to give blows on her side, and Sandy could take it no more, and then, screaming loud, "Enough!" Dr. Mayer thrust the sword in the Chinese woman. Sandy let go and the woman fell on the floor. Sandy and Dr. Mayer breathed a sigh of relief, but not for long. The Chinese woman jumped up and charged at Dr. Mayer. He sidestepped, and the sword swung and slashed her back, and she continued to charge, going through the broken window, falling to the ground to her death. Before Dr. Mayer could say anything, the police were on the scene. He and his assistant quickly escaped out the back to his car. Bedroom Antics Chapter 2, Against the World by Jason Burns. Just a very, very rough sketch, but it just gives you an idea. Why is he being chased? You will find out in subsequent chapters. I hope it's been an encouragement to you and an entertainment. I'll let you comment and give you a chance to comment, so thank you and take care.